Good morning, good morning. Right, it's Friday, so I'm going to answer the final question for this week, and that is going to be Christine's question. Now, I did have a couple more, but I don't think I'm going to get time before we start on Monday, the Freedom Programme. So this question is from Christine, and Christine says, how do you stop past emotional trauma from resurfacing and learn to trust again? So I just want to start off by saying that trauma is a very sort of complex and can be very complex experience for an individual, and each individual's experience of trauma is going to be completely unique for them. So whilst I will do my best to answer this question, it may not do it justice in a sort of mini vlog like this, because it can be quite complex. And my own experience of trauma was that I've had to do quite a lot of work around self-regulating my system and learning to trust myself again. So the question you asked, Christine, is I'll do it in two parts. How do you stop past emotional trauma from resurfacing? I don't know if you can actually stop trauma from resurfacing, but what I do know is that when the memories, and this is definitely my experience, when the memories of trauma, so like if you think about events that have happened in your life that you have experienced as traumatic. Now I can think of, my brother dying and my brother and father being in the same accident as being very traumatic. And I remember that event, I remember everything about that event, and that led me to have symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder for many, many, many years until I came across the understanding, which I want to teach you in the Freedom Programme, which I allude to on these vlogs. Now, I no longer have any symptoms of PTSD, but that is one thing where we can have an event that happens to us and we can have a memory of that, which can cause flashbacks and difficulties around that one event. Now, there are other traumatic events that may have happened to us in our lives that we don't necessarily remember, right? So these are often traumas that are stored in our body and become often unconscious. So they might be running the show behind the scenes, but it's not something that we're hugely aware of. So I'll give you another example. Someone that I once worked with was often incredibly triggered by people abandoning her or rejecting her in whatever way she, through her unique lens, saw that was happening for her. And because she was fearful of that, although it was unconscious because she was left by her mother very early on, or her perception was that she was left by her mother. She stored, when she was little, a lot of those unconscious fears and feelings into her system, which as she grew up and as she grew older, she wasn't necessarily very aware of and didn't really think she had any issues around this particular aspect of her life. And as we dug deeper into this work, what came out was that she was storing a lot of emotion in her body, in her psyche, around abandonment and rejection, and thus acted out or reacted to certain situations from this place of very kind of deep-rooted wounding. So what we do in this work is we make the unconscious conscious. So we kind of delve a little bit deeper into understanding what makes a human being tick. And this is obviously work that I do with my one-to-one clients. And I just want to caveat this by saying the freedom program, the She Finds Freedom program, is the foundation. It's the foundational piece. It helps you to understand how you're creating your experience from the inside out, whatever it is you've been through. And that is about self-healing. That is about holistically healing yourself. Firstly, to understand how we create our experience, and then to give yourself love, compassion, understanding. And so once we start to make the unconscious conscious, you'll realize why you react in certain ways to certain situations or certain energetics, why it's familiar for you to go into certain places. It's really getting to look at how the trauma, once it becomes visible to you, is running the show in the background. It's almost like your ego is wanting to protect you from any further pain, and it will do its utmost to try and protect you. So think of it as like a protector part. Now, these are sort of unconscious parts of yourself that are trying to protect you from any further pain. So it's always psychological innocence, and it's always doing, your brain is doing the best that it can see to do through the lens at which it sees the world. So how do we stop trauma resurfacing, Christine, is that we stop blaming yourself, stop shaming yourself, stop abandoning yourself, stop criticizing yourself, stop alienating yourself. Stop internalizing what happened to you as being in some way your fault. Start to see the innocence of you and anyone else around you, and start to see that you deserve love and kindness and respect and understanding, that you're worth investing in time, and to understand how we keep creating often the same patterns of behavior, because we often create them because there's a lesson to be learned or there's trauma to be loved. You know, there's an experience in you that needs some attention, and it will keep kind of popping up until it's seen. I remember one mentor once said to me, and I will never forget this, because what she said was, it's like what you're doing, it's like there's loads of little orphans at your door, and they're knocking at the door, and they're homeless, and they're starving, and they're asking for you for help. And I was like, oh, could they not be puppies? Because what she's saying is essentially you're shutting the door on all of your emotions and saying, no, fuck off, shame you. And I thought, well, actually, I couldn't shut the door on some puppies, but I might be able to shut the door on some children. That's what I felt at the time. I mean, no, I wouldn't do that. Of course, I wouldn't do that in real life, but that's how I felt at that moment. But then as I've sort of grown to understand it, what I see about that now is that that little child in you, that little part of you that's created the protector part or whatever is doing its best to keep you safe and keep you from being hurt, is reaching up to big you, to adult you, and asking for help. And you are shaming and blaming and judging and, you know, abandoning that little part of you. So of course it keeps showing up until you're ready to see it. So learning to trust again, Christine, it's literally about connecting to that part in you that is trustworthy, that always has your back, that knows exactly what you need and when you need it and who you need to learn from. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So learning to trust again, Christine, is about trusting yourself, because once you trust yourself, you can make decisions knowing that you are regulated and that you don't need to ask for advice from, you know, Bob and Duncan and Julie over there, because you trust yourself. You don't need to sit in self-doubt and self-recrimination and thinking that everyone else knows better than you, because once you trust yourself, it's a whole different ball game, and you don't need to justify or try and prove people wrong or prove yourself right or sit in, you know, the depths of comparison with other people, because you trust yourself, you trust your journey, you trust your intuition, you trust your inner knowing. And every time you strengthen that connection to self, the trauma that often sits in our system gently, gently, gently moves through. Because that's the thing with any emotion, energy, emotion, it always wants to move through you. And often we are sitting in sort of static emotions that have stuck in our system. And your body will have a way of talking to you, whether that be through IBS, through skin symptoms, through hair loss, through period pains, through eczema, through any autoimmunes. Your body will always be trying to communicate with you, because there is innate wisdom in your body. And the more you can listen into that and trust that you have got some fucking fabulous inner guidance system that will be far more accurate and important and relevant to you than I can ever be. But if no one's ever taught you how to connect to that part, or to trust that place in you, or has no one's ever taught you how to sit in that and be okay with that, then of course we won't know how to do it, and that is alien. And that's a lot of the work that I do, certainly with my one-to-one clients. But you know, I do my best to point you to those places during the Freedom Program, which starts on Monday, or you can come into my Circle community, which has a lot of group coaching. And if you sign up to the Freedom Program, you'll get access to the Circle automatically for free. So you'll not only get calls starting from this Monday, every Monday for the 8 weeks, but you'll also get the access to the extra 4 calls from the Circle. So over 2 months, that is 16 calls and access to loads and loads and loads of resources. So you'll be able to really learn how you are creating your experience and be in an environment of a lovely bunch of women where you're held and supported and heard. And if group stuff isn't your thing, send me a message and we can talk about one-to-one. But for now, Christine, I hope that answers your question. It was a really interesting question, and I could spend quite a lot of time going into a lot of the stuff around that. And it's been one of my greatest learnings about energetically regulating my system, because I knew for all of my life, really up until the last few years, I was in an activated stress response. I didn't know I was safe. My nervous system was constantly activated, and thus I had you know, all the symptoms of stress, which if you've watched a video of me being coached, you'll have seen the difference between me then and me now. And if you haven't seen that video, let me know in the comments and I will send you the link. But anyway, it's been lovely doing these questions all week. Thank you for asking the questions. If you want any more information about my She Finds Freedom program, you've got 3 days left. We start on Monday and it will be an amazing experience for you. So if you've got any questions, just ping me a message. But for now, I will talk to you next week. Lots of love.